All right, so let's start this. Alain, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
We're just geeking out over comic books and stuff of that nature. And it's interesting to see how culture has shifted over the last, I would say, over the last years, but 10, 15 years for me has been a big change because I don't know for you, but when I was in school, let's say Marvel, everything that was Star Wars wasn't that mainstream, right? Was it different for you?
Yeah, I think every generation is close. There's not a big difference. It's not a question of being mainstream. It's a question of being cool,
Yeah.
right? So when I was a kid, I think it was just as popular. Just the movies made it bigger today.
Yeah.
But the comic books were selling big volume.
Mm-hmm.
Just that when you're in school and you want to look cool, so being a comic book reader is not necessarily cool. It is today. It's a different world.
Yeah,
today.
exactly.
But I mean, back then, my time, your time, or let's say most of the people that's 10 years and
Back,
over
yeah.
back, right? So before Iron Man in 2008. To look cool, you wouldn't show that you like comic books, whatever type of comic books.
Yeah.
Even you'd watch what type of music you were listening to, because there was some type of music you didn't look cool, right? So you'd protect your image.
Yeah.
Because as a kid, kids can be nasty or mean if you don't fit in. So you try to fit in.
Can you hold the mic just a bit closer?
And I think today it's easier. It's much easier to fit in.
Yeah.
Much easier. Being a geek is more natural.
Yeah, it's more accessible, and you see on social media everything that is being shared around that, and you see like, oh, there's actually a very big community of people that like what I like. And I'm sure in the past it was the same. It's just that nobody really talked about it.
No,
let's say I was interested in Star Wars, you would never know because I would never say it just out loud in class or whatnot. And
you're right on that. Star Wars is 40 years old, and when it came out, it was still the biggest movie of its era.
Yeah.
So, but then again, people weren't walking with T-shirts. You didn't have conventions as much as today.
Mm-hmm.
So the everything has shifted. Collecting has become bigger than it was.
Yeah.
40 years ago or 20 years ago. I had toys 30, 40 years ago that today, I was walking a convention this weekend and I was seeing some of the toys I owned that are worth 10, 15, 25,000.
Yeah.
And that's just a figurine.
That's crazy, yeah.
So, but back then you would just like throw it away. You wouldn't realize how popular it would one day become.
Yeah.
So a lot of people would want to get back to these old stuff. So it's a different era today.
Interesting.
Today, the kids, you go to Gap, you go to everywhere, and you've got clothing from all of this geek world. So you start dressing your kids very early into it.
Yeah.
And they just absorb it right away. So they're...
I mean, I'm curious to get your point on this because I think it's actually a very smart marketing, not a scheme, obviously, but a marketing technique in the sense that you're actually catering to the parents. You're going to buy the kids clothes. You're going to buy their toys. And if you see that their toys and their clothes are actually what you used to consume when you were little, you're way more likely to buy them.
But yeah, generally, obviously the first reflex you'll have when you're buying anything to a kid, if you're a woman, you'll buy Barbies because when you were a child, you were playing with Barbies. And when you're a man, you'll be trying to buy what you're playing with.
Like Hot Wheels or...
whatever. The cars or army figurines or Star Wars or whatever, because that gets you closer to your child. Mm-hmm. Because if you're buying something you also like that brings you to your childhood, well, you re-become this child when you're playing with your child. So it's not just a marketing for the kids. Obviously, kids will, by instinct, love what the parents love.
That's true.
Generally, what's cool for the parents is cool for the kids.
Yeah.
As they grow up, they get to like their personalities, they start to kick in, and what they value more start to differentiate a bit. But the core, if your parents find something cool, you're more likely to be in that same Same type of era. You look at childs that grow in a house where rock and roll is played or hard rock is played in the house. As they grow, they'll grow loving that music because it's the music they've always listened to as a child.
That's so
It's
true.
it's a little bit the same thing. So, of course, we know with my kids, yes, you know Jonathan and my kids, you start them early, bringing into the Marvel world and the Star Wars world and the Disney world, and obviously they start loving it young, and then one day they have kids. Again, Jonathan is an example, and then their kid starts loving the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's
Is that and I'm obviously like I'm going to develop on what you said here, but is that how your relationship with Jonathan really because I see you guys are super close, right? You just went to Chicago together for the convention, Star Wars
Yes.
convention, right?
Yes.
Is that what keeps you very, how can I say, that bond very solid? Where, because I feel like a lot of times when it's, let's say, father and son, and it can be the same with mother and daughter, when you grow up, you kind of grow apart because there's not that thing that's holding you back together.
I think as a child, if your parents did not share something they loved with you and brought you into it, somewhere in time it's going to separate.
Yeah.
But if you're brought into something you both share alike, then you'll always have that bond. So for us, that was one of them. It was something that, when it's business, it's business. When it's my life, his life, it's that. But when we have the things that bonds us together, that's the one that that brings us back to when he was a child or as a young father. We love the same thing, so it's like a continuity, and he's doing the same thing to his son now.
That's amazing.
So it's kind of cool to have that circle continuing down. So when you have the kid that's 2 years old doing the Jedi with the sword, knows all of the characters in the Star Wars universe, they can name them all when he's 2.5 years old, and play with the lightsaber. It's kind of cool. I mean, it's like, hey, it's like I wouldn't say we converted him because you breed them into
Yeah.
But,
And sometimes they get even more interested in it than you, right?
But I think the observation even Jonathan notices when the dad says it's cool, and the kid goes, it's cool. Right?
Yeah.
Because, it's not that you're forcing them into something, there's, you notice sometimes with time, some kids are different and they'll not necessarily kick into something. But when they kick in, it obviously bonds you. Like if you're you're very a sports athlete and you play, let's say, baseball regularly, and you start bringing your child into the game at the park, sees you playing, and you start throwing ball with the child, and then he grows up and start playing ball, and then you end up coaching them, then you've got this bond over a sport. So it's just finding this thing that bonds you.
What happened with my dad and me. He used to play soccer, and ever since I was little, he was always the one just coaching me into soccer. I don't play professionally, like I could have, but I decided to focus on something else. But it's still the one thing that if there's a World Cup going on, if there's something going on, a league going on, we can always go back to that and have that bond that is just like untainted by time.
Exact same example. It's just that your father, that's what got him going. That what gets him going is is soccer.
Yeah.
So it's your bond. What got me going as a child up to today, it's the geek world. So obviously that's the bond with my son, and then it continues on.
Are you excited for the next Avengers movie?
Absolutely. I think I'm not alone when you start looking at the pre-numbers that are coming out.
Apparently it's going to be like the most anticipated movie of the year.
Well, I think it is the most anticipated. I think they're predicting 900 million worldwide.
That's crazy.
900 million in sales the first weekend, worldwide weekend.
Wow.
Weekend.
We-
Some movies would die on a theater run to do that. That's not a theater run. That's
just the
That's
weekend.
just the first weekend worldwide.
That's insane.
They're saying 900 millions.
How?
Yeah, that's a lot.
I wonder like how Disney really does it, because like
It's the story, right? DC has a hard time, and a lot of other companies tried, and it's not working. Harry Potter was a success, and The second series, which I don't remember the name, is not working out. You know, the storytelling is the most important. You won't go see something if the story's not good. You're gonna stop watching it.
Yeah.
So the secret is that the stories are always relevant. That you still, when you walk out, you feel entertained and you feel kind of surprised that there's always something new. That the story are compelling. They talk to you.
Yeah.
And that's the magic they've got with that series.
And even if you know the story, like even let's say for myself, I read the comic books.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably had read some. Jonathan read some. Even if you know the story, you're just gonna go because you know it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be epic, you know.
They still twist the stories, which is great because, you know, I read the books. I read all the books, the Civil War and Infinity War or Infinity Gauntlet or all the versions.
They have to condense it in a smaller package too,
and they
right?
have to surprise you also because you have restriction on time doing movies. And if you do a copy and paste, then
the movie's going to be
then
20 hours long.
The movie's still going to be great, but I mean, it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to surprise you. To surprise you, it needs twists. So that's the good side of what they've created.
So,
you know,
since we're like in the origin story kind of world right now, we're talking about narratives and whatnot. I thought we'd dive in a little bit about like, what's your origin story?
Yes.
Like, where are you from? Where did you grow up? What did you study? A quick, 5-minute kind of origin story.
Oh boy, I need more than 5 minutes. As you can say, my life is separated in a few phases. The first phase, from being a small child in school or preschool, school up to 11 years old, I was a child that had no confidence, no friends, that was bullied, very, very bullied. So my only universe to hide from that was the comic books. So the Captain Americas and Iron Man and all were a little bit my escape route. So I would read a lot of those alone, because at school, you're the last chosen, and if people are playing around, it's just to throw the ball in your face or whatever. So it was a little bit tough. And then when we hit phase 2, I think Star Wars is the reason for it, especially Empire Strikes Back. I'd say that's the major life-changing moment is when I saw Empire Strikes Back. I'm 11 years old. It's playing in a theater downtown in Montreal. I'm in Laval. I'm all alone, obviously, no friends, so I gotta make a plan to go see the movie alone, take the bus, take the metro, be courageous enough to do it, go to the theater, which was called Empire at that time, which was a nice theater, very old style theater with the red curtains and the balconies, which was really a beautiful theater. And I sat down and watched the movie, and when the Luke Skywalker training came around with Yoda, that's when it all happened.
That was epic.
That's, for me, was all there. 3 things. The first one is when he's lifting rocks and stuff, and Yoda goes to Luke, lift that rock, and he goes, okay, I'll try. He says, no, there is no try. Do or do not. There is no try. First thing that pops in my head is, you can't, if you want to do something in life, you do it.
Yeah.
You can't try to open a door. You open it or you don't.
Or you move on to the next.
That's it. And then the next thing, the next big moment, let's say the biggest of it is when his X-Wing is diving into the swamp, and he's going like, oh no, I'm stuck here. What am I gonna do? And blah blah blah. And then Yoda tells him, lift it, and he goes, well, it's way too big. He says, size does not matter. And that means that there's no challenges big enough than what you tell yourself. So if your mind controls the size of the challenge, right? And then he tries to lift it, he can't lift it, and Yoda lifts it out of the swamp. drops it, and then when Luke looks at it and he says, "I can't believe it," and Yoda tells him, "That's why you failed." So I think those are the three things that came out of it. You do something, you want to do something, you do it. You're never afraid of the size of the challenge. You go for it, right? And you got to believe in what you want to do. So I came out of that day saying to myself, that's it. So I had this girl that was living in my building. And, I'm in an area, we don't have money. We're in a small apartment. We're like, we're almost stacked one over the other. And I got this girl that's just next door, a beautiful girl. I'm really, really really into her. But now I'm determined I will get her. Right?
You'll go talk to her and
I'll go to her and I'll win her over. And actually I did. And she's my wife today and grandmother of the kids, mother of my kids and grandmother of our grandchild.
Holy shit.
So that was the first success of my life. But beyond that, it's like I changed everything in my focus. I got a lot of confidence. I wasn't afraid of dressing the way I wanted to dress. And that era was Michael Jackson, breakdancing. So I was even going to school with the glove, with the gloves.
Yeah, the white gloves.
The white, with all the little shiny things on it. And I would go and dance, and I got into breakdancing, and I wasn't afraid to fight if I had to fight. It's like it was a full transformation. And I became the cool guy at school, and I became kind of popular in a sense. They would come to me for how should I dress this, like you're doing this cool and blah, blah, blah. So it's always like a full transformation. And that believe in myself brought me to believe in anything I could do. And we start planning out our lives. Before my wife became my wife, obviously we're still teenagers and we're living like not a great life, and our parents are unsuccessful in whatever they do. So we start planning everything else. Like at 20 we do this, at 25 we're this, at 30 we're this, at 40 we're this. It's like we have this plan. We're gonna have 3 kids, a boy and 2 girls, and all of that was planned. It was so planned, and when we got married, we actually set it on video. I got a tape that we were gonna have 3 kids, a boy and 2 girls, and that's what we got, a boy and 2 girls. That's insane. And like everything was planned. At 20 years old, I drew a house. On a piece. I was good in drawings. I drew a house. I said, we're going to live in this house one day. And I had this house, this drawing, on the last page of a pad that I had working. So a notepad for whatever I'd use for job. I'd always have to lift the whole pad and watch in the back that drawing that I put, which was the house we would live in. And at age of 35, I think, we lived in that house that I drew. So a lot of things was just like, I think it's believing, focusing, the funny thing is that this weekend, as I was there at the convention you mentioned earlier, the Star Wars convention, the funny thing is that I realized I'm not alone in this story. Star Wars changed the life of a lot of people. Yeah. Especially that Empire Strikes Back storyline. Changed the lives of a lot of people. And when you're sitting down and talking with others of those geeks, we'll call them, and some of them are very successful business owners and stuff. We were talking cars and this and that. And then you realize we went through the same phases. And that movie turned everything around. Transformed the way we saw goals. The way we got determined. And it brings us a lot to say that we kind of believe in the Force. Not the Force in the cinematic world, but more the like Force the in will. The sense of the will. Exactly. That there is some sort of energy around us. There is something that if you really will something, it will happen. And I would have stories for hours to give you of situation where they were so crazy that I willed something so hard that within 24 hours it happened. I'll give you one strong example of how strong this was. I am 20 years old. I walk into a dealership that hires me as a salesperson. So I'm a super, super good salesman, but I'm this young, I'm this young, very dynamic salesman, and I want to prove to everybody that I'm good, and I love cars, so I'm hyper knowledgeable. I know everything about the car, so much that in those first 6 months, the older salesmen, they all come to me for questions. Hey, Alain, what's the package on this one? What's the package on this one? Like, what's the options on this package? And I was so good in numbers, I could calculate leasings off my head. So they would come to me instead of going to the manager saying, what would be the lease on this car for 24 months? I go, this car, it's blah, blah. And then they would go. So 6 months later, the sales manager brings me in. He goes, hey, how would you like to be assistant manager? Right? Continue selling and you'd be assistant manager and help the team out. I go, right, no problem, man. I am loving this. It's great, fantastic. So I'm doing this. But you know what's happening in this following 6 months is I'm gaining a lot of space. People aren't going to the manager anymore. They're just coming to me. And he was the kind of manager in that era that, would drink, would go for our 2-hour lunch and come back very relaxed and leave a little earlier. So I become the center of attention. So what happens is I remember this all my life, where the Christmas party at the dealership, were 23rd of December, because we're going to close for the 24th and all. So the party is in the showroom. Cars are being moved out and blah, blah, blah. The manager calls me in his office. And he brings me in. He goes, Alain, he says, we have things to talk about. He says, it can't continue what you're doing? What you're doing, exactly. So you've got two choices. You return as a salesman, or we give you your 4%.
Okay.
So I'm 20, going on 21, and I'm going like, what? In my mind.
Yeah, because you didn't know what was happening.
But instinct got me, I'll get back to you, right? So I get up. I don't react. I don't go crazy. I don't give a bad vibe to everybody. I walk out like nothing happened, but I go right away to the best salesman in the house. Nick Carlucci, the best salesman, one of the best in the province at that time. I go to Nick, I go, Nick, if I go somewhere else as a manager, do you follow me? He goes, yes. Perfect. I go to the second best. And he's 20 years older than me, Nick. I'm just a kid. And I go to the second best salesman in the house. I go, if I go somewhere else as a manager, Drago, his name, do you follow me? He goes, yes. I go, perfect. So I did the party, not telling anybody what just happened, staying very positive. Went home because we were closed and we were reopening for Boxing Day. I just go home and I tell my wife I go, this is the situation. Blah, 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 blah. I says, this is how we're going to do it. I know the competition. There's a dealer across the bridge. They've got issues with their management. Things aren't going the right way. I'm going to walk there, meet the owner, tell him I'm going to build a team and make his dealer the best dealer in Quebec, or one of the best. And I'm going to get the job. I'm so confident. On 26th, I enter. We're just off. It's 24 and 25, so nothing's happening. Yeah. So on the 26th, I enter. I tell him I'm going to take the 4%. I clean up my desk and I leave.
Without having actually
nothing.
Talked
but
to
in my mind, that was the plan. So I come home 26, 27, 28, and going to the reopening, the 2nd or the 3rd. I don't remember the exact date. So I'm doing this plan and I'm building up a business plan, a presentation. I'm going to present to the owner of the other dealer exactly how I'm going to do it. And we're in the typewriter era. We're not in the word processing with computers. So I'm typing this, and then I'm going to the whatever Office Depot that exists at that time, doing photocopies and do 2 binders, one for me and one to hand him over. And then I go on the opening when the dealers reopen. I walk into that dealer. I ask for the owner. I sit down in front of the owner, and I do him my show. I present him the show. I present him my package. He looks at it and he goes, will Nick follow you if you come here? I said, yes. So he goes, if Nick follows you, you've got the job. I go, great. Obviously, we're not in the cell phone era, so there's no way for me to call him. So I just leave, go home, start dialing until I can reach him. Then I tell him, Nick, you're starting Monday. You're coming to me at this dealer. He says, okay, boom. And then a week later, I was sales manager at this dealership. And he was like third to last when I walked into that dealer. Second to last in customer satisfaction. And I brought them to third position in sales and best in customer service in a 3-year span.
Wow.
And
So
the manager...
Nick followed you?
Yes,
And
Nick
did
followed,
the-
and the Drago followed me
Drago,
also.
yeah.
So both of them followed. And we built a super team. And then we went on from there. And then there's a lot of other stories, but karma, much later in time, I'm still in the car business, but now I'm at Porsche as a manager. And we're sponsoring a tournament at Saint Raphael in Ile Bizarre. So I arrive at the parking for the backdrop with the Porsche, obviously, with a 911. So we park, we open the doors, and we start getting the bags out. And guess who's picking up the bag at the backdrop?
Oh my God.
That manager that gave me the choice
Of the 4%.
of the 4% or that. He's
Or-
now a bag guy in a golf course.
Wow.
See how life can be. So I could have stories galore, but yeah, I really believe that if you will something, if you believe in something,
You can make it
will
happen.
happen. It will happen. I'm not talking winning the lottery. That's not going to happen, right? That's dreaming. You have to realize if you're dreaming in impossible, or you're willing something that can happen.
And you have to do the work too, which a lot of people, like, as much as, you know, you did have that will, you also put in the hours. You also,
Yes.
you had a plan.
Absolutely.
And that's like the difference between someone that thinks it's just like, you know, woo-woo kind of stuff. Like, yeah, I'm going to will it to happen versus actually happening, which is what you did.
Absolutely. I think in life, it's all a question of seeing where you want to be and then
Mapping out
the path to get to it, right? Because that's what life is basically. So you have to, if you ask anybody where you want to be in 5 years and they can't answer, they won't know where they're going to be in 6 months. Whatever you plan is not necessarily going to happen exactly the way you want. It's like using Waze, right? So you start your road to destination and then whoops, deviation on the way, because if you continue on this route, it's going to take 10 minutes more. But if you move on this route, you can say that's life, right?
You have to be adaptable.
You have to adapt, and then you might hit a pothole and get a flat, and you might have a breakdown, and you have to have it repaired, and you lose a bit of time, and then you got to get back. And that's life. Life is full of surprises.
It's messy.
Yeah, it is messy, but you can't lose target, right? You can't just abandon and go, all right, so I ain't gonna see my parents anymore because there's traffic, because there's deviation, because it's over. That's not over. It could be bad weather, so it's tomorrow instead of today, right? So a plane is canceled, so it's the next day. Who cares, right? But that's life. So you might have a plan, and one of those steps is canceled. It's not over.
Yeah.
It's just a process to the next one. You just turn the page to the next, or it's like reading a book. You know, there's this, it just went bad for the hero, and he just got...
But that's what makes it interesting too.
Yeah, of course.
Which, again, I find that this is why, like, reading books and even all these origin stories, like Marvel Universe, I'm a big Marvel fan. I don't know if you can tell. But, like, everything that has a plot twist, a challenge, I find that that's what we resonate with the most as human beings, and we should welcome it. Like much like Yoda said, okay, lift this rock. That's kind of life.
It is, and that's why I read these books also, because I think they connect me to the real life, even if they're fantasy. They're fantasy that has a base based on real life. You know, and that's how it comes out from the imagination of somebody that lives and brings his emotions down into a story, like a singer brings his emotions down into a story, like a love song. So it's based on emotions you've lived. And that's how you become a very good storyteller, because you've had stories that happened to you, and you just take those stories and you transform them into fantasy.
So you went from being a shy kid at school to basically going to talk to the girl that is now your wife.
Yes.
You worked in car dealerships.
Yes.
How did you make that transition from being like a sales manager in car dealerships to having now an IT a placement firm, which is called Arobas? How did all that happen?
That's another interesting story, right? So again, another twist in life. So I'm at this stage where I'm living in the house I drew.
Okay.
I own a Bentley Continental GT. My wife is driving. I remember if she had the Cayenne Turbo or Lincoln MKS, whatever. She was driving a luxury SUV. Kids were in private school. We're living on a golf course. Life is gorgeous. So I'm in the car dealerships, and now it's time to plan to the next step. You know, it's like, okay, now I'm making money to these people, but I'm not the one that's. I've always said, like, I'm a handshake away of saying thank you very much, but F off, right? So if they sell their business, you help bring up the value of their business.
But you don't own any of it. Yeah.
You know, they capitalize on that success, and you're stuck with new owners that might like you, that might not like you, that might bring people to replace you, and then you're effed, right?
Yeah.
So I go to myself, I think it's time to move on to having my own dealers. So I rally up investors. We're in 2007, so we're starting this process. We've got investors lined up. We're going to start buying multiple dealerships. So I have 4 dealers we're talking with. 3 of them we get into letter of intents. One doesn't work out. 2 of them get approved. They approve the offers. So we start the due diligence process, and with car dealerships, you can't just buy it from the owner. You also have to be accredited by the dealer because they're franchises. So we go through the process with the manufacturers, and we start the process. But it's a long process. From the moment you start negotiating, you do a letter of intent, and you start doing your due diligence and your process of getting accredited with the dealers, the manufacturers. There's a long time that happens. So we're 6 months into it. So I'm starting to get into a conflict of interest with where I'm working, because I'm working in a group of dealerships. So I see the owner, I tell him what's going on. So I leave Porsche to pursue these purchases. But, you know, I have such a great relation with the owners that he's backing me up. Not financially, but I mean reference-wise and all. So there's no issues there. But the big surprise happens in August of 2008. So we're on the verge of getting accepted. Everything is going very well. The market crashes.
Yeah.
Big time. And when it crashes hard, car business is also affected big time.
Yeah.
The true brands that I'm actually have letter intents, I'm in process, are 2 of the American brands, 2 of the big 3, which actually the 3 big 3s are in process of bankruptcy protection. They fall into bankruptcy protection in 2008. So I am using my investments. I'm actually margining my investments. Margining is you're using as collateral what's invested, and you use line of credits against it to take the money to finance all of this purchasing. Yeah. And what happens when you're doing that in the marketplace is if the marketplace crashes under a threshold, they do margin callbacks. That means they call back the money.
Okay.
Because you're using market as a collateral, but if the market goes below the money that's owed, they call back the money, right? And the Black Monday, where the markets crashed in the 80s, where people went crazy, a lot of people threw themselves out of buildings when that happened. You know, because in a snap of fingers, I lost over $1 million of assets. Everything disappeared in one shot. And obviously investors backed out. The banks weren't financing anymore. It's like everything crashed.
Yep.
So second big challenge in life. The first one, we'll call it minor when I was 20. This one I'd say was pretty major when that happened, 2008.
It was a turning point.
Yeah, and I'm 40. And I've attained a lot of goals. But suddenly, everything I worked for till 40 is disappearing. From one day to the other, I'm not in a Bentley anymore, in a Pontiac Vibe. Because everything had to go. So I'd say I had my first 3 bad months. Really, 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 really bad months of reevaluating life in itself. Until you refocus and go, okay, how did I get here?
Mm-hmm.
And then as you get older, you're still too young for that. And as you get older, you'll start saying that. Your father says it, or your uncles will say that. Is you always say, if I knew today, I knew when I was 20 what I know today, if I knew all of that when I was 20, man, I'd be like rich. So I go, but hey, I know everything. I can fast track everything.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just plan it out again and do it quicker.
Yep.
Right? So again, I have always had this attitude of never showing that if it's not going well, people must not ever, ever know. So my circle, my inner circle, family and all knew. Everybody outside my circle never knew.
You were like ice.
They wouldn't know the difference. Like, how's everything going? It's not like, it's not going well. Because a lot of people that are negative will do that. They're telling you their negative story. It's like, okay, I don't need you.
I just going to talk on this point because I'm someone that is very much like that. Like, if you come up to me and you tell me about your negative stories, misery loves company. And there's nothing good that ever comes out of that.
No, absolutely not. And I'm not a good listener for that. So I'm definitely not going to be a good storyteller, negative. So I stay out of it. So I was a member in a golf course, and I said, that's one thing I'm going to keep. I strategically kept a few things that even when the hard times came in, that shouldn't change. Private schools for the kid, the golf membership. Not because I had to play golf. I'm not a good golfer. But for networking, it's a heck of a place.
Yeah.
And they don't know what you're driving in unless you park it in valet and you show it off. So for all the years I was there, they saw me with nice cars, with Porsches or whatever. Mm-hmm. So suddenly the next day you park this Pontiac Vibe in the parking lot and you walk to the tee off. They don't know.
Yeah, they don't.
In their mind, you're still driving these cars.
For sure.
Okay. So you could start talking projects, taking all the positive energy from these people and what they're working on and things, and you start nurturing your brain with what's the next step. Car business is over. It takes too much time. Mm-hmm. Nights, the weekends, and needed more of time with the family and all. And the time off that I had from working on the purchasing of the dealer was more often home than not, obviously. And I enjoyed that part, being more with my wife and the kids. Mm. I was looking for projects that I could have call it a normal life, even if an entrepreneur is never a normal life.
It's never very balanced.
But you wanted more balance and time. Mm-hmm. So one day I'm playing golf, and I'm playing with this member that I've never played with before, and he's talking to me about his business, in the staffing in the IT business. Mm. And he explains to me how it works and stuff. And for me, business is business. That you sell water bottles or phones or
a service.
Personnel. Business is business. So it's all about relationships, rapports, and giving a good service. So I'm listening to his business, and we're playing golf again and again and again because we're enjoying playing together. And then one day I go like, I just thought of something I could have his business grow. So I do this plan. So one morning we go to breakfast. Actually, we're on a golf course, and I tell him, man, I got this idea for you. It's going to bring your business to the next level. He goes, okay, let's do breakfast. Perfect. So we're on breakfast, and I present him this idea. And he goes, man, that's great. When can you start? I said, Monday. Okay, so you're in. So November 9, 2009, I entered Arobas Personnel as an employee.
Wow, okay.
And fast forward in time, I'm the president, majority shareholder of that company and in other projects.
In the span of
of
12
9
years?
years.
No.
2009. We're in
Okay,
2019.
okay. Yeah.
So we're 9 years and 6 months into it. In November, it's going to be 10 years.
Okay, so when the crash happened, it took you kind of like a transition period before tackling into this this venture, this new venture.
Yeah, and restarting. Pressing the reset button and restarting into something.
It takes a lot of perspective to do that, and then really taking a step back, because a lot of people, like, if they have reached your level of sales and, you know, like the kind of lifestyle that you had, getting that blow might be such a hit to their ego that they would just crumble.
Yeah, well, obviously, I said I had 3 months of reevaluating life.
Mm-hmm.
Just that I think my overall positive attitude on the majority of my lifespan helped turn it around very quickly.
You're resourceful. You don't dwell onto something you can't control. Really.
No, actually, I turn the page on things I can't control. And I believe that what happens, and nothing in life happens everything happens for a reason. Like, there's always a reason for why it happened. And when you really look back into life and you look at all those stages, you go, okay, this happened and this happened because of that. You know, sometimes my wife goes, if, and this is the things like, I always tell her, I don't live in ifs, and I never live in the past. I use the past as a platform for the future of not repeating mistakes, of being better. But I never if the past. Because if you do a if in the past and you say, what if I wouldn't have left the car business, I would have stayed there, and I wouldn't have crashed, I wouldn't have lost my assets, I would still be in the same place, I actually wouldn't be where I'm at today.
For sure.
Which is a higher level than where I would have been. And of course I had to lose, but for me the loss in 2008 was almost like a bungee jump. Where I jumped, got down,
but when when the
elastic really hit, it propelled me at a higher level than where I was. So if I relook at my life, as I'm reassessing constantly the 20-year, where I should be in 10 years and in 20 years, and I know where I should be. You know, when I was 40, I knew where I should be at 50 and where I should be at 60. Well, at 50, I'm even a little further out there where I should be. So now I know where I should be at 60. So I'm working on the next 10 years now. So,
and you need to reassess that because you're actually further along the road.
Actually, I'm not reassessing it because I think there's always surprises down the road. I'm saying I'm a little bit ahead of the game. Mm-hmm. That means I have more odds of hitting the 60 target at 60 or before. Mm-hmm. Even if it's a little later. You know, so a lot of times I'll say to my wife, at 60, we should be at this level, let's say in life richness. And she'd say, yeah, but what happens if we're not, you know, for me, it's like, if we're 80% of that, if we're 70% of that, we're still
pretty good.
We're still much higher, right? So, and that's how you target life.
Do you always aim a bit higher?
Always.
Yeah?
Always, in a realistic way. Always, but in a realistic way. So let's say I'll start and I'll say, you know, when the house was the target A, obviously Porsches and cars like that is a fun target. And then when they say I'll have an Aston Martin, and then whoops, you get it.
Yeah.
Right. So these are, I think for me, the cars, the funny thing is that I don't drink, or very little, you know, a little bit of wine here and there. But, you know, I'm not a drinker. I never, ever, ever, ever got drunk in my life. Ever. I never touched a cigarette and then anything else beyond a cigarette.
Wow.
So gamble, I don't gamble. The highest I've put on the table is $100 just to see how, you know, on the roulette, you know, gambling on colors, red or black. So I'm not even playing it really deep. So I don't gamble. I don't even know how to play blackjack. I hate anything that has to do with odds because I figure I can control life. I don't have to play with odds. I'll play with what I can control. So since I'm quiet on all these things, and I have the same wife since I'm with her since we're 15 years old. So I don't have mistresses. I don't have things that cost money, stupid, irresponsible money. So for me, the only thing where I feel I'm weak, let's say, because it's my pleasure, is the cars.
Cars.
Right? And at the same time, the cars it tells me a little bit where I'm at. Because a bank account or value or business value or whatever you have equity stakes, it's things you can't touch, right? You can open your statement and you see it, but it's like a number. It's like Monopoly. It doesn't mean anything. I like to have a reference where as I'm moving up a ladder, I have to be able to stop, look down, which height I'm now at. Okay, so I'm up to here. All right, so let's continue moving up. So I always have a reference of where I'm at. For me, the cars is somehow my trophies that tells me where I'm at.
Yeah, and also you have to enjoy yourself.
Yeah, no, I enjoy myself. I enjoy myself in the geekness and a lot of stuff. So I don't have Rolexes and stuff like that. So the car is, for me, it's a little bit of that pleasure of driving my trophies.
Yep.
Of moving around in the trophies, of looking at them, of sitting in them, enjoying them. So I know where I'm at. So then what's the next one? So the next one has to be a hypercar.
Oh, right? Amazing.
So, a $1 million car. So that's like you say, that's the next level you wanna reach. So that should be in 5 years.
5 years.
5 years should be the hypercar level.
So right now, at this level, at today that you just came out from a meeting for Workbase.
Yes.
Tell us a bit more about that Workbase. Why did you come up with that idea, and what really sparked it?
Well, the two business I own, let's say the primary one is personnel business in IT. So we're dealing with company growth every day. People need staff. That's a huge challenge. And what comes up a lot with some of our customers is space. Because as they're getting funding or they need more people to get their projects down the line, they need space. Space is being an issue. And some of them also because they're not well positioned. They're in Ville Saint-Laurent and certain programmers are a little bit fussy about where it's at, and a lot of them don't even own a car. Even if they make $80, $100 an hour, they don't want to spend on a car. So they want everything accessible downtown. So you have to get locations that are good for them. And in our building, we kind of had the space to do something that could answer growth, company growth. And we were seeing companies like WeWork growing massively worldwide, and the statistics showing how much demand there's for that kind of business. So we decided to jump into the bandwagon and create an office space that would answer to this office need, but twist it a little bit. Not just doing it the more traditional way. WeWork is beautiful spaces, more industrial look. Some other spaces are more business spaces.
Yeah.
We chose to go a little bit boutique style, a little more geek. So we can't use, like in our office as you visited, we can't use the Marvels and the Star Wars and these things. So you can use it in private space, but you're not allowed to use it in spaces you're actually promoting and selling. Because there's copyrights to them.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a little line that you can't pass.
So what can you use?
But you can create the environments. So our conference rooms will all be thematic. So not one conference room will be the same. So one could be like a wine cellar type of decoration. Another one could be like a metro station design. Another one could be a little bit a very retro expedition style. Another one could be space
like galactic
or like a again, we can't use brands, but let's say a Star Trek meeting room type of design without being
that's insane.
One of these brands. So that's one of the signature we'll use. All the conference rooms will be different.
Thematic
Gives you, the temptation of eventually using all of them and inviting your guests over to do the meetings in those conference rooms because it's kind of cool.
Well, depending on what kind of business you have and what you're talking about too.
It still doesn't matter because everybody likes cool.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like a Barbie room or there's not a signature to a room saying like or not. It's universal enough to be thematic and work with anybody. If you do a medieval room, it's going to work with most people.
Yeah.
You know, you look at Game of Thrones number. You can't do a Game of Thrones, but you can do medieval. So eventually, as we take more space in the building, because our goal is to grow it out, now we have a 15,000 square foot to start with, which is a very good size. And we're going to grow it. Our goal is to grow it up to the 4 stories in the building to 60,000 square feet.
It's on St. Catherine, right?
On St. Catherine, yeah. Right next to Square Phillips and the Bay.
So is it mostly conference rooms, or are you going to have like spaces for individuals?
It's full office space. So there will be conference rooms. I put the accent on conference rooms because those will be thematic. But, you know, we're going to have a huge lounge, lots of private offices, some shared offices, open offices for people that just want to open membership. So it's going to be a very co-working, open style environment. So, but with some freshness, using some cool technology.
And you're gonna have the same. Is it Jonathan that's going to be over there more than?
No, Jonathan is in the personnel business.
Okay.
So he'll keep the focus on the personnel business. I have my daughter, one of my daughters that is more implicated in that business, with a girl that we brought in that has a lot of co-working experience.
Amazing.
So it's pretty cool.
So I wanted to follow up like with a topic that is very relevant to what we're talking about, because I see you doing all these things. You're planning out beforehand. You're doing so much stuff, obviously, because like every time I see you, you have a new event, you have a new venture that's going on. How do you deal with overwhelm? Do you ever feel it? Do you ever feel like you're doing too much, and how do you keep that balance?
I think if you're well prepared, you don't get overwhelmed.
Okay.
And you have to surround yourself with the right people. You have to accept the fact that you don't know everything. You know?
That was actually a really hard one for me. When starting my business, especially when you're an entrepreneur, you tend to just want to do everything. And
the worst thing is to believe you've got to do everything. You know, a lot of owners, they own a business. And because they own a business, they become so protective of the business. They want to do everything, and they don't accept somebody else that takes a lot too much space or decisions. They have to control. They micromanage their environment. The danger of that is that you can't create value. A business, in order to grow, it means you have to clone. It means you can't be there. You have to be replaceable. So if you want to be, your business needs to become successful, it means you can't be there. You have to build it independent enough to be successful. The best comparison is your business is the child you give birth. You have to bring this business to be fully independent. It'll go from its child moments, learning to walk. Those are the first 3 years of business where it makes or break. If you're really close to your business and you do good thing and you surround it properly, you give it the good first 3 years, and then it becomes independent. And then when it becomes independent, it becomes like a teenager. So a business becomes a teenager in its 4th year. You know, so the 4th to 5th, 6th year is those teenager level, and you want to bring it to maturity. Maturity is when you have to delegate, and you have to surround yourself by people that could do your job, you know, or parts of your jobs where you're just pointing and you're just directing. You know, you become a director, like a movie. Okay, here, do this, and this is the right way. Okay, now redo this, and this is wrong, and da. So you can observe what's going on when you start delegating. Because if you're still consumed and doing everything, you don't see what's happening.
I think there's a difference between working on the business versus working in the business, right? Like when you're too much in, you can't really take a step back and look at the big picture.
No, exactly. You're stuck into it, and then you start comparing people to yourself,
which is
stupid. You don't accept that person is not doing it like you. Yeah, but I'm working 70 hours a week, and he's not working, or she's not working. Yeah, but they don't own the business.
Yeah, that's something that I had to kind of learn for myself too, because as much as you want people working for you to work with as much passion as you, doing the same thing that you would do, spending those extra hours, you have to accept that they don't own the company.
They don't have the same mission you do.
Yeah.
So they don't own the company. They don't have the same mission. When somebody's working for someone, majority of them, their target is less than a year. A lot of the time you'll ask them, so what's your project for the next year? Day by day. Mm-hmm. How often you hear that? For me, it's jour par jour, right? It's day by day. The day by day is the people that work, right? And the managers are people that have a year vision. The owners are people that have 3 and beyond vision. Mm-hmm. And that's the big difference if you separate the people. Mm-hmm. So you can't expect people that don't have the same mission as you, that don't have a long-term view. It's like driving a race car. To drive a race car, you have to have the capacity of always looking a kilometer away. The further you look at,
even if
the
there's
slower the road seems to be going.
And even if there's like someone right next to you, you have to focus like very far.
Very
You're not
far.
turning your head to...
No, very far. And if you're looking very far away, you see the curves coming. You see everything coming. You can pre-react to it. You don't feel the speed. But if you start looking, the closer and closer you look in front of the car, the faster the car seems to go, and the more stressful it is to drive.
That's such a good analogy.
You could do this tomorrow. Drive your car and just do that exercise. You look 10 feet in front of you, you're going to start getting nervous. But if you look as far away as you can, you'll take the whole stress away. I never look at the cars in front of me. I try to look at through the window of that car.
Yeah, and looking to see the light. Is it turning yellow? Is it turning red? You start braking before instead of like looking here, and then you look up, you're like, oh shit, it's a red light. I think like that analogy also ties into competitors. Like a lot of times I feel like the businesses that are doing the most, like doing very well, they're businesses that look so far ahead that their competitors right now don't even matter that much. All right, so before I ask the final question, I wanted to touch upon a point which you brought up earlier, which I think is super important for the people that are listening right now, but also for myself, which was that when you go up to someone and you want to get their attention, you want to do business with them, go up to them with value, which is what you did at that golf course. Like you came up to this person with a plan of how you could actually grow their business. And I think a lot of people like never think further than themselves. They just go up to someone and they're like, I want to do business with you. And then when they ask the other question, you're like, well, I don't know, I'm just going to work, but I don't really have a direction. So it's not just about planning for yourself, it's also for planning for the others. Like, how am I bringing value to this person? And I'm sure like you've done this over and over again for the dealerships as well. And that's how it brought you these connections and brought you to this point.
It's like a tape that you're constantly replaying. And it all starts by your personal life. You can only do something in your business life that you're doing in your personal life. So if you plan your personal life, you can plan business life. If you can't plan your personal life, you cannot plan your business life. You are attached to yourself. It's the same person. It's the same vision,
which is repeated in different scenarios.
Repeated different scenarios. It's like it's your basis, right? So you have to program your mind into seeing farther and to planning it farther. You have to program your mind. You have to program these reflexes. It's like going to the gym. Mm-hmm. It's not instinctive until you're programmed, brainwash yourself into believing that's it. Repeating to yourself, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Becomes a habit.
You know, and watching it. And just I'm going to do it because this is one step after you've made your plan. Like I said, you have to break down things. First exercise is you got to do a 3-year plan. If I pushed it out to the 20, the 10, and then broke it down. But
you can start smaller.
You have to start to train yourself. You have to start with a thinner plan. But you start 3-year. Where do I want to be in 3 years? So to be there in 3 years, where do I need to be in 2 years? So you don't have to do 2 to 3, but where you need to be in 2 years. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. So where I need to be in 2 years. So where do I need to be in 1.5 years? Okay. And now where do I need to be in a year? And then from a year to now, you have to break it down into months. And that's how you start your targets. So now I can control my month to month as I'm moving along target 1. And then as I'm moving along to target 1, depending of where I landed at target 1, I readjust for the mid of target 2 from a year and a half to 2 years. I resegment into 12 months or to that last year. But then it will become instinctive. Before you end the third year, you'll already be planning the 5 years because you'll add 2 more years to it.
I'm at 5 years now.
Perfect.
5-year plan.
Perfect.
That's why when I heard your 20-year plan, I was like, oh, damn, this is the next level.
Yeah, because you have to align that 5-year with a bigger plan.
That's true.
Right? So it's like landing Thanos into the Marvel universe and you see him 4 years down into the movies with the first Avengers, and you're landing something in 2012 that's actually going to happen in 2018. Right? So there's a bigger plan. So you just insert it slowly into that bigger plan, and then you just plot everything that happens to the plan and we'll make it work out. And that's life.
And it also gives you patience, because I feel like a lot of people, like, they on the day-to-day basis, they overestimate what they can do, but they underestimate what they can do in 20 years. But 20 years is actually a great amount of time to accomplish a lot of things. But if you don't plan it out, you're never going to do really much anything.
Because people discourage themselves too quickly because they figure things can happen in 6 months. They don't happen. They go, ça marche pas. Ça marche pas. It's never gonna happen. I don't believe it. And then whatever is, then you start getting around these people. You tell them, I'm gonna be doing this in the year. They go, hey, it's not gonna happen. This is no. If I had $1 for everybody that told me that whatever I'm doing wouldn't happen, probably be richer than what I'm at now. Because I'm surrounded by people that told me I would never succeed, that would go bankrupt, that would, whatever the reason, because people, they envy you. They envy you because they envy what they can't do. Everybody can do the same thing, unless things keep you from doing it mentally wise or whatever. But everybody has the same capacity. It's either you believe it or you don't. And you plan it out. Plan it out. Don't get discouraged. That's why you do these timelines in longer spans, because it's not going to happen in 6 months. And sometimes, as I was getting older, you go, okay, we'll tell my wife at 50 we'll be this, at 60 we'll be going, hey, the kid's almost retired. And I said, we're never going to retire.
Because you love it. You love what you're doing.
I don't believe in retirement.
I don't either. I don't think like I'll ever just sit and do nothing.
It'll never happen. So, the plans will just be pushed ahead and ahead and ahead. So when I reach 60, I'll be planning to 80. Now I'm planning to 60 and 70. But then I'll just push it to the 70 and the 80. I'll reassess the 70 and I'll refocus the 80. And then move on from there, because I think we're in an era where we could live 100.
Yeah.
Technology's there.
For sure.
Right? So if there's something that could happen. But I mean, you can't now focus your life saying, okay, I'm going to die at 80. You don't know. And you can't focus on retiring. A lot of people, they die once they stop doing everything they were used to doing. So you can't stop. And this is something we're going to be closing, but this is something I've learned at my Porsche days. Because being at Porsche, my daily customer was successful people. It's like you couldn't be more surrounded by successful people on a daily basis. People that would own not just one jet. I had customers at that time that owned 2 jets. It's not just 1, 2 jets.
In case the other one isn't working.
Whatever. And I had one that was ordering a $41 million Challenger Global Express. When I was selling him a Porsche. I was selling some $600,000 US Porsches to some customers. So it's just what I was saying. The big thing is that I noticed a lot of them, they were 65, 70, 80, 85, and they're buying these cars and they're working. They have a job. They have a business. And it's the first realization of saying, there's no end, right? The end is the day your brain shuts down. As long as your brain is alive, there is no end. So there's no end game. It's just live it, plan, move forward. assume you've got a lot of years to play with. So if you got a lot of years to play with, 5, 10, 20 years is very little.
Yeah.
Very little. And life isn't a race. It's something I've always told my son. When my son would go, if I want a Ferrari, life is not a race. Wait. It's not going to bring you happiness. This is one thing I say to everybody's going to ask me. Okay, but if you succeed, what will it bring you? Actually, it will not bring me more happiness than I have today. I can never be more happier in my life than I am today. And that I've been saying every day, and it's something when my kids were at home, I was saying like every day is the best day of my life. You're healthy, you're in love, you're loved is the best day of your life. Material is nothing. Material is just
well, it's icing.
It's a measurement.
Icing on the cake too.
It's a measurement of where you're at. It's something you can afford because of it's a reward based on effort. That's all. But it doesn't bring you happiness. The day I got the car I dreamt of,
the next day it was just your car.
I wasn't happier. I was excited for that moment, but I wasn't happier. It doesn't bring me more joy. There's some people are trying to buy joy. You can't buy joy. Joy is something you have inside of you.
You have it.
You believe it. I'm happy. I'm super happy. So I'm not running after happiness. So that means that if something doesn't succeed, it doesn't make me sad. You see, that's the difference. Some people, they measure their happiness on success. And when they're not, when there's no success, they're sad. Canadians are winning. It's fantastic. Canadians are losing. This life is city. No. I'm using Canadians as an example, but you get the drift.
Yeah, no offense there.
But yeah, that's it. So for me, success is more of it's challenges to keep you going. It's the challenges in life that keeps you motivated, that keeps you driven. It's like competition for an athlete. For me, my competition in my mind is business.
It's a sport.
It's not happiness. Happiness, I've got it all. I could stop everything today as is, not do anything more. I'd be happy to the last day of my life.
So Alain, it was a pleasure to have you
Same
on.
here. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know you're a very busy man. Final question before we leave. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh my God. I've actually, as funny thing is as much with all these years of reading comic books, my favorite superhero is Captain America, so he doesn't really have anything special other than honor.
Honor.
Yeah, I think his biggest superpower other than super strength is honor, is staying true to himself, always protect the others before himself.
Being of service.
I think my happiness comes on the happiness of others. So sharing happiness is part of my own pleasure. I draw a lot of that from making other people happy. So I think it's where I be like Captain America is my style. So
that's beautiful. Thank you, Alain.
Pleasure. Thank you, man.
Thank you very much for tuning into the show. It would mean the world to me if you went on iTunes and you left me a review. If you want to leave me a 1-star review because you really hated the show, I guess it's okay. Just leave me your honest feedback. But if you want to leave me a 5-star, that's even better, in my personal opinion. No bias there. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, until next time.